Today we're going to talk about investment opportunities in the context of artificial intelligence coming up on Business Matters. All right, thank you very much for being here with me this Thursday afternoon. I'm your host, Don Ma. Starting off with markets, S&P 500 and NASDAQ finished lower today after falling back from record highs reached in yesterday's session. Now, the Dow was slightly higher. Now all eyes on tomorrow's jobs data. And mention a few companies here. Nvidia fell and was back to being the world's third most valuable company after it jumped ahead of Apple, crossing $3 trillion in market value yesterday. It's down about 1%, it looks like, today. And shares of GameStop surged over 47% after the online stock influencer known as Roaring Kitty posted on YouTube that he would host a live stream tomorrow. All right, let's talk about the European Central Bank's decision today. Made its first rate cut in 5 years, the ECB cut its record high benchmark rate by a quarter point. Now it's sitting at 3.75%. So the bank president declined to say how fast and deep any future cuts might be. Annual inflation in May was 2.6% and expected to stay above the ECB's 2% target. Now here's ECB President Christine Lagarde.
And I can assure you that we take the fight against inflation extremely seriously. And if there is one thing that I have learned in this job is that we have to be persistent, we have to be determined, we have to be data dependent, but we cannot give up on the objective. And our objective is to tame inflation and to bring prices back, to bring inflation back to 2% in the medium term.
Now, the ECB is not first here. Central banks in smaller economies have already cut rates. So that's like Canada, Sweden, Switzerland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. So investors are closely watching whether the Federal Reserve in the U.S. will follow suit. The U.S. Consumer Price Index still at an annual rate of 3.4%, far from the Fed's 2% target. World stocks hit an all-time high, and the euro rose today after the European Central Bank's decision. As well, for the first time, total energy investment expected to exceed $3 trillion this year, and this is according to the International Energy Agency. Global investment in clean energy technology and infrastructure is set to hit $2 trillion this year, and that is twice the amount going into fossil fuels. China is set to account for the largest share of clean energy investment in 2024, with an estimated $675 billion. Europe coming in second, and the United States next with $315 billion in investment. And earlier, I spoke to the chief investment strategist at RIA Advisors. I asked him for his analysis on the ECB's decision, and we also talked about whether clean energy is where you should invest your money in. Here he is. Lance, thank you very much for your time today. So, one step ahead of the Fed, it seems like the European Central Bank cutting a quarter of a percentage point. Let me just get your perspective on that.
Well, it's not surprising. Growth in Europe is a little bit slower than it is in the U.S. If you take a look at economic growth kind of worldwide, the U.S. is really kind of leading the way in terms of economic strength. The Bank of Canada just cut rates yesterday, and of course now the ECB cutting rates today. There's a very close correlation between central banks, and so it'll be very unusual for the ECB and the Bank of Canada to cut rates and for the Federal Reserve not to follow. So, while they're not directly in coordination with each other, they do try to maintain a certain level of equality between rates, because if one country cuts rates and another one doesn't, it can affect the currency between those two countries, which, if you have a big deviation in the currency, one's a lot stronger than the other, it can cause economic disparities. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Fed follow suit probably between, July and September.
So I have an idea of your stance when it comes to our central bank cutting rates, but do you think this is the right move for the ECB?
Yeah, look, what they're trying to do, of course, is just the same thing the Fed is going to do, is try to stave off a potential recession. So as the economy weakens, they're going to be cutting rates to try to keep economic growth active, right? So lower rates potentially helps foster financing in the economy, lowers, mortgage costs, those credit card costs, those type of things. So in an attempt to try to get ahead of a deeper economic contraction, they're now cutting rates.
All right, and another thing I wanted your comments on. So this is in light of this AI chase, which very much still there, as we've seen yesterday, with NVIDIA overtaking Apple. So your article on your website, RIA Advisors, it's titled AI Data Centers and EVs Creating Incredible Opportunities. My question is, where are the lucrative investment opportunities?
Well, the one thing that artificial intelligence, we're all focusing on the chips right now, but the one thing that's coming down the road is all the infrastructure that goes with that. We've got to rebuild our power grid. If we're going to an economy where everybody's driving an electric vehicle, if everybody's using AI, if we're mining Bitcoin, these are all extremely energy intensive industries, and we simply don't have the power generation for it. Wind isn't going to do it. Solar's not going to do it. We're going to have to focus on natural gas, nuclear, geothermal, tidal type production of electricity that can generate it in mass quantities, because there's going to be such a big demand for that. That's a massive infrastructure build out within the economy. The government will be involved in that because that's their constitutional responsibility. They only have two jobs: national defense and infrastructure. So they will be involved in that process, in a private-public relationship with utility companies that have to build out these grids. But that's tons of jobs. That is, people are going to have to produce commodities for that, copper wiring, et cetera. All the jobs to build out the cement, the infrastructure, all those type of things. It's going to be, if we get to that point where if AI comes to fruition, it's going to be a very big economic benefit for the country down the road. And this will be spread out, right? This is not next year. This is over the next 20 years. But it could be a very beneficial assistance to the overall economy.
So the International Energy Agency today actually said that combined investment in renewable power and grids overtook the amount spent on fossil fuels in 2023. I don't know. Is clean energy where it's at, or is it not?
No, it's not. And it's not surprising that there was a lot of push in 2023 for renewable energy, because that's the political structure right now. So it's not surprising there's a lot of investment in that, but it's not efficient, not to the degree that natural gas and oil, as well as nuclear. Nuclear power is much more efficient than solar or wind. Same thing with natural gas, same thing with oil-based energy production. So in order to build out the amount of electricity that we're going to need in the future, we're going to have to focus on much more efficient ways to produce that electricity. And unfortunately, solar and wind, because of its just very nature, right? It gets dark at night. There's times that the wind doesn't blow. You need a very steady supply of energy that's reliable for the type of industries that we're going to be building in the future. So we're going to have to focus on much more efficient and much more reliable forms of energy in the future.
All right. Very well said here, Lance Roberts, RIA Advisors. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Another big thing today, SpaceX's Starship rocket survived a fiery hypersonic return from space, and as well achieving a breakthrough landing demonstration in the Indian Ocean. So it completed a full test mission around the globe on the rocket's fourth try, and the SpaceX Starship rocket took off from its Starbase facility in South Texas in spectacular fashion. Take a look at this. The massive vessel is equipped with a rocket booster known as the Super Heavy. It roared to life, igniting all 33 of its main engines and blasted the Starship off over the Gulf of Mexico. So Starship is actually the most powerful rocket ever built. And speaking of which, Boeing's new Starliner capsule and NASA crew safely docked with the International Space Station today. This is a key test improving the vessel's flight worthiness, and as well as sharpening Boeing's competition with Elon Musk's SpaceX. So the docking was successful despite an earlier loss of several jet thrusters, some of them due to a helium leak, which NASA and Boeing said should not compromise the mission. So the Starliner arrived at the orbiting platform after a flight of nearly 27 hours. And following its launch from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. And now changing gears to social media, YouTube is changing its policies about videos related to guns. The age restrictions on gun videos is an effort to keep potentially dangerous content from reaching underage users. NTD's Sean Marshall tells us more.
YouTube said it will prohibit any videos demonstrating how to remove firearm safety devices, as well as videos showing homemade guns, automatic weapons, and certain firearms accessories like silencers will be restricted to users 18 and older.
Most people have to understand that young people are consuming these videos multiple ways. It could be on their parents' device, their parents' desktop, their parents' laptop, their parents' cell phone, their parents' tablet, their parents' computer. So saying, well, we're going to limit young people by their own accounts is very difficult to do unless you're actually going to start monitoring each person who goes on to YouTube to check their ID to see how old they are.
The changes take effect June 18th. Along with TikTok, YouTube is one of the most popular sites for children and teens. Gun safety advocates have repeatedly called on the platform to do more to ensure gun videos aren't making their way to the site's youngest users. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has written to YouTube CEO Neil Mohan and asked to meet with him to discuss why the platform allowed video tutorials for ghost guns, firearms assembled using 3D printed parts or kit components.
And YouTube could be losing another segment of their audience. We could be continuing to divide social media by platforms that sort of advocate and sort of are for people on the left and platforms that advocate are for people on the right. And this is where we might continue to see a growing sort of schism between YouTube and Rumble in terms of the users on there and the type of content that we see on there.
YouTube said the policy changes were designed to reflect new developments. YouTube requires users under 17 to get their parents' permission before using their site. Accounts for users younger than 13 are linked to the parental account.
Hey, I told you enough of that.
But look, this is different. It's Ganjin World.
There are alternative video platforms that are free of violent content like Ganjin World. It seeks to keep all violent and sexual content off its platform. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
All right, Sean, thanks for that report. And on that note, let's take a break. Coming up, a top U.S. news app with ties to China reportedly producing fake news using artificial intelligence. The app has 50 million monthly users. And NFL fans sue the NFL in possibly the biggest lawsuit in American sports history. The trial begins today. That and more coming up after the break. Don't go away. Real quick, let me go through with you what else is happening today. Netflix started rolling out the first major revamp of its television app in a decade today for hundreds of millions globally. So revisions to the homepage included enlarging title cards, reorganizing information, and highlighting easy-to-read tidbits. As well, trading platform Robinhood is dropping about $200 million in cash to buy cryptocurrency exchange Bitstamp. Its core spot exchange is popular in Europe and Asia and has over 85 tradable assets. The deal is expected to close in the first half of next year. And the union that represents American Airlines flight attendants has unanimously rejected the latest proposal from the company. American offered a wage increase of 17%. The union said American Airlines flight attendants want a complete contract addressing all concerns. And robotaxi testing is coming to Austin and Miami. Amazon will be rolling out its autonomous vehicle Zoox in the cities, but no public rides yet. Amazon is still exploring several cities for commercial offerings. It also has test cars in San Francisco and Las Vegas. All right, let me mention some China-related stories today. One of the most downloaded news apps in the United States, named Newsbreak, now becoming a piece of breaking news itself. So the app has ties to China and is allegedly producing fake news using artificial intelligence. And here's one example of that. Last Christmas Eve, the app published an alarming piece about a small town shooting in Bridgeton, New Jersey. But in reality, no such shooting took place despite the article. Local police department said in a Facebook post that nothing even similar to this story occurred on or around Christmas, or even in recent memory for the area that they described. So Newsbreak told Reuters it removed the article 4 days later. Overall, a Reuters review of court files and company memos found dozens of cases where the app used AI tools to publish erroneous stories and create stories from local news sites under fictitious bylines. So Newsbreak is headquartered in California and has offices in Beijing and Shanghai. Several of the company's former employees told Reuters that the app's main algorithm is actually developed in China. It's backed by a Chinese company as well that the Pentagon said were allegedly working with Beijing's military. Okay, moving on from that, the U.S. has approved the sale of F-16 fighter jet spare parts and repairs to Taiwan. So the Pentagon's Defense Security Cooperation Agency made the announcement. It said that the U.S. State Department has approved the $80 million deal. In a statement, the agency said this will help improve Taiwan's security and help maintain political stability as well as military balance and economic progress in the region. So Taiwan's defense ministry said the sale would boost combat and defense needs in its air force. Now, according to the ministry, the sale will be finalized next month. China has repeatedly demanded previously that the U.S. stop selling weapons to Taiwan. And next, Novo Nordisk, the maker of some popular weight loss drugs, is facing more competition in China. Local drug makers are developing over a dozen generic versions of its diabetes drug Ozempic and weight loss treatment Wegovy. Here's more.
Novo Nordisk, maker of blockbuster drug Ozempic, may face serious competition in China. The Danish company had high hopes that the drug would boom in the promising Chinese market. In 2021, Ozempic won approval from China, and last year Novo Nordisk saw sales of the drug there double to almost $700 million. It's expecting Wegovy to be approved this year. But the patent on semaglutide, the active ingredient in both medicines, expires in China in 2026, which is far ahead of the expiry in other key markets like Japan, Europe and the US. Novo is in a legal fight over the patent in China, but an adverse court ruling could mean the company loses its semaglutide exclusivity even sooner. Those circumstances have drawn several of the country's drug makers to the fray. Records show at least 11 semaglutide drug candidates from Chinese firms are in the final stages of clinical trials. And one company said it has developed a drug that has, quote, similar clinical efficacy and safety as Ozempic. In April, it applied for approval for sale, which it has said could come in the second half of 2025, with plans to sell the drug the following year. That's unless Novo loses its patent battle sooner.
And staying in the pharmaceutical space, employees of drug maker WuXi AppTec are under U.S. scrutiny for links to the Chinese military. Now, according to a Reuters report, scientists are listed as co-inventors in an altitude sickness treatment with People's Liberation Army scientists. So treatments for such illnesses are a top priority for China's PLA, which fought with India as recently as 2022 on their Himalayan frontier. Now, WuXi AppTec told Reuters it did not collaborate with China's military, the PLA. It said that its employees are listed in patent documents because they had invented compounds earlier while doing research for a client. Moving on from China. It begins today one of the most momentous trials in American sports history. The NFL defends itself against allegations it's harming fans by violating antitrust law. Here's the story.
NFL fans are suing the NFL in a multi-billion-dollar class action. The case revolves around the price they need to pay for the NFL Sunday ticket package.
The sides are fighting over whether the NFL teams are allowed to collectively sell their broadcast rights.
Sports law professor Mark Edelman says the 32 NFL teams are basically 32 separate businesses under the Sherman Antitrust Act.
Separate businesses are supposed to be competing against one another to provide the best product at the lowest cost with the highest quality. They are not supposed to be working together.
But fans allege they are. Fans have to pay a high price for the Sunday ticket package if they want to see out-of-market games on Sunday. For example, an Atlanta Falcons fan who lives in Pennsylvania would have to buy the package.
What is at stake for the fans is that ability to pick and choose which games they will pay for to watch that are out of town.
Sports attorney Katie Charleston says Sunday ticket prices are inflated because fans can't get these games anywhere else. What's at stake for the NFL is a big shakeup of their business model and up to $21 billion in damages.
A win for the plaintiffs would take a big chunk of money out of the pockets of the NFL owners, but it would in no way break them. The sale of a new football expansion team would immediately probably bring in a minimum of $3 to $5 billion.
Edelman says many such cases usually settle before final adjudication.
And did you know today marks the 40th anniversary of the release of Tetris? Remember that game? Here's what you need to know.
Here's a blast from the past. This is vintage video from the 1980s of Tetris. The video game featuring frantically falling blocks celebrates its 40th anniversary this year. The franchise continues to evolve and expand with a new mobile title, Tetris Block Puzzle, out now for iOS and Android. The force is strong with this one. Zynga has released Star Wars Hunters. The team-based battle game set in a galaxy far, far away is available now on Nintendo Switch, Android, and iOS devices.
It's the end of everything. Might as well try to stop it.
Nathan Fillion returns to his voice role as Cade Six in Destiny 2: The Final Shape. The conclusion to Destiny 2's Light and Darkness storyline features Fillion's character, along with new gear, a new subclass to play as, and a new raid for hardcore players.
And our last story today, Starbucks is teaming up with Grubhub as it tries to boost sales after a challenging quarter. So the coffee chain said most of its beverages and food will be available through the delivery provider starting this month. The partnership is already active in Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Illinois, and some other locations. Starbucks says items should be available on Grubhub throughout the country by August. Customers already have options to order from Starbucks through DoorDash and Uber Eats. So delivery has been a bright spot for the chain and amid slumping sales. In the last quarter, sales at U.S. locations open at least 13 months fell 3%. Deliveries, however, grew by double digits. All right, that's all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. And if you have any feedback for the episode, please feel free to let me know. You can email us at business@ntd.com or leave a comment online. I do read them. And as I always say, business matters. See you tomorrow.